Hello everybody, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how my friend and I turned this empty jar into a completely, totally free, amazing terrarium. Let's get right into it. We began by washing and rinsing our jar. You're going to want to do this until you can't smell the soap, nor what was in the jar before you began washing it. We then proceeded to dry our jar. We used paper towels, but microfiber cloth would be best. You can also use cotton balls or cotton swabs. We then proceeded to collect some mosses. You can find mosses in your backyard, front yard, under your porch, or even in some of your garden beds. Now you're going to want to be sure of a few things while collecting your mosses. 1, that they can do good in a terrarium environment. 2, that they're compatible with your other mosses, and 3, that they won't get too large for your terrarium. We also collected a small species of grass. Now, you're going to want to be sure that your grass is small enough that it won't overshadow your other plants, and also you must beware of their large root systems. We then proceeded to collect some hardscape, and my friend said this. Yes, take the mossy bits indeed. Every little bit of foliage helps bring your terrarium to life. Hardscape is an important part of your terrarium. It's the backbone for your entire design. Now, whether it's covered in moss or not, whether it's a slate stone or a piece of wood that my friend calls driftwood, but I call a stick, it's still very important. I'd say it was required, but it's not. And then we encountered across this beautiful creature.
And we saw a hawk, which was taking a dump on our moss.
Okay, she didn't really take a dump on our moss, but anyway, let's continue. We then proceeded to collect some liverwort. This is an ancient species of plant and kind of an evolutionary dead end if you believe in that kind of thing. I personally don't, but I'm not going to get religious here. Liverwort, while it may look like a small plant, is actually very quick to spread, and it needs to be kept moist constantly lest you want it to dry out. We, at the end of the day, had a very good haul. We were able to collect many different pieces of hardscape and plants like liverwort, mosses, driftwood, grasses, and I even filmed a springtail, which my friend said was basically impossible, so props to me, I guess. We also had some activated carbon pellets just sitting around that my friend actually gave to me, and I decided to use them. We then proceeded to add what is called a false bottom. We added some activated carbon pellets. You can also do this with pebbles if you have enough space. The concept of a false bottom is to separate the excess water in your terrarium from the substrate or dirt. If you don't have any window screen mesh lying around, you can use a cutout of a plastic bag. Here, my friend is tracing on a Kroger bag, not sponsored by the way, and cutting a circle that matches the size of the lid of our jar. It can be a little bit larger, and it can be based off of the lid or the base of your jar. If it's larger, just make sure that it has a lip pointing upwards, as if it's pointing downwards, it'll encourage dirt to fall in, while pointing upwards will do the exact opposite. We then proceeded, or at least my friend did, to poke a bunch of holes in our cutout. If you have mesh, you can skip this step as the holes are pre-cut for you. If you don't, however, you're going to want to be poking a bunch of holes in your bag cutout until it's about like mesh. It's not the best option, but it's the most cheap option, which is best for some people. However, cheap doesn't always mean functional, especially not when you're using a false bottom barrier. Once you've cut enough holes in it, it should look something like this, if not even more punctured. You're then going to want to position this barrier in between your pebbles and the rest of the jar. You're going to want to use pebbles if your jar is large enough, and then put the charcoal or carbon on the top of your barrier, as that is where the springtails will live. We then proceeded to add our substrate. Substrate is just a fancy word for dirt or planting medium. Your substrate, as the definition suggests, will be where your plants go. It will be where they get their nourishment and nutrients from, as well as where your soil creatures will live. Soil creatures include isopods, springtails, mites, etc., and they're all beneficial, unless if your terrarium is too small. That's why we didn't add any isopods. Meanwhile, while I was explaining this, my friend was doing a thing called scaping. That's basically where you put some sort of mound up, or mounds up, made of the dirt or substrate in your jar to give it a little bit more depth. Then, once you've scaped it, if you're going to scape it, as it is a little bit difficult, the more dirt you add, or the smaller your jar is. But afterwards, you're going to want to add your hardscape. As you just saw, my friend added some and then sprayed a little bit of water onto it to help water the moss and keep it moist, because as previously explained, if not kept moist enough, it will die. And as you can tell by this very shoddy filmsmanship, that I'm the one with the camera and my friend is the one doing the scaping, as he's been doing this a little bit longer than me, but I've done it a little bit more than he has. He really wanted to help out, and it was his birthday, so I allowed it. It may take hours to get your substrate and your hardscape just right. So imagine how long it'll take you to get your plants. As you can see, we started with the grasses first. Now, what my friend is doing right now is called propagation or splitting, which is where he, splits the plant apart to make it smaller. Now, you may think that it hurts the plant, but my friend would do no such thing because he absolutely adores plants. They're his passion. He loves them very much. We are now adding the tallest plant to the back of the terrarium. That's a pro tip right there. Always add your tallest plants to the back of the terrarium so that they don't overshadow your smaller plants like this moss. Now what we're doing is once more propagating it or splitting it into a smaller piece. Now, at first we tried it with this size, but as you'll see, it wasn't meant to be. We decided to take out our moss, or at least that piece of moss, and split it in half once more. Of course, it doesn't hurt the plant, as explained. But anyways, then we were able to get it in a nice spot, and we were satisfied with it. So we were able to move on to the next plant. But very quickly, make sure that your plants are small enough. As my friend is about to show you via this visual, this moss, you've already seen the original piece that it was broken off of more towards the beginning. But just looking at it in comparison to the jar, you can tell that it's far too large. However, this moss, called badge moss, is not. We were able to fit it in 2 pieces, in fact, and they'll be going in now. It was meant to be 1 piece at first, but a smaller bit broke off, and as you can see by my friend rolling it down in front of the grass, it was placed there, of course. It is a moss, so we had to experiment to see if it was taller than the grass. Of course, the intended piece was still placed behind the grass, like so. We then proceeded to water the terrarium, and as you can see, there's some slate stones in there now, which weren't there before. After watering it, we then proceeded to clean the inside of the glass. Like I said before, microfiber cloth would work best, but we decided to use what we had on hand, and that would be paper towels and a cotton swab or Q-tip. Of course, cotton balls also work just as well. It took us a fairly long time to do all of this, and to be honest, it was worth it. After 4 hours of slaving over this terrarium, adding in hardscape off camera, and adding in some mites, this is what we came up with. A beautiful, totally free terrarium. Of course, we are not counting the expenses of the food that was in the jar itself, the baggie, or the activated carbon. Oh, we even tried to do the pan around thing, and it ended up sounding like this. Yeah, I know, that sounded pretty bad. And to this day, I still don't know how they do it without making so much noise. Or maybe it does, and they just do the voiceover. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell as I try to upload weekly. Also, please do remember to comment on the video and share this video with your friends, enemies, and frenemies. And Introvert out.